Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it as always. And I have another fantastic guest with me today. Her name is Kristin Fields Chadwick. She is a podcast coach and podcast producer, a Spirit Led Transformational Coach, and mother of four. She is also the host of the Wholistic Podcasting podcast and the Wholistic Hearts podcast. Kristin loves championing others to use their voice and bring their story out to the world. Kristin, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Cheryl, for having me on here. I'm so excited.
And I'm so excited I'm talking to another Coloradan.
I know, right?
I know.
I feel like there's not a lot of podcasters in Colorado, so it is fun to interact with another podcaster here.
There really are a few. I can give you a list later.
Okay, I want to know. I mean, I know
Yes.
my clients personally, but not outside of my clientele. So
Right. Exactly.
yes.
Well, so tell us how in the world you got into this podcasting business and becoming a podcasting host and a producer, because you actually started out in physical fitness and psychology. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So I love coaching people. I mean, that has been the common thread through every single work environment that I've done since I was a teenager. So whether that was coaching people through their physical fitness, being a friend that listens and gives feedback well, or been in situations where just being able to listen and hear people's stories and then give feedback has always been a big passion of mine. And how I got into podcasting is a really cool story. So I was going back to grad school to get my counseling degree. And at the last minute, I had kind of a gut check of like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time. And I had already been accepted in the program, and had a week till school was starting. And I ended up calling and was like, you know what? I don't feel right about it. So I'm withdrawing from the program. And it felt so counterintuitive to me and just felt natural that I was going to continue on with counseling. And yeah, there was something just saying, nope, this isn't it. And 2 days later, one of my good friends from a mother's group, her husband called me and he was like, hey, Kristin, we're starting a new podcast. We're going off of the radio and we want to be more in podcasting and we want it to be grassroots. And we would love for you to be our podcast producer. And I just kind of laughed. I was like, what is that? What do you do as a podcast producer? And this was back in 2016. So podcasting was not quite where it is today. I mean, 2020 is really when it took off, but 2016, it really was a jump in the deep end and try to figure this thing out. So my friend and his wife started a podcast called Rebel Parenting. And we grew that show from nothing to top 25 within about 6 months. And it was so much fun. And I would not be where I am if he didn't see something within me that was called to that. Now, the backstory is my mom's a therapist, and my dad has been in broadcasting since before I was born and helped grow a very big network. And he passed away in 2015.
Oh,
And
I'm
so,
sorry.
yeah. So, but it was really redeeming and sweet in 2016 when Ryan, the Rebel Parenting founder, basically was like, Kristin, you have it in your blood to do this. And so that's what started me on this journey. And I loved connecting with guests. I loved talking to all the authors and big speakers and well-known ministers and preachers. And that just lit my fire. I just loved hearing the backstory from people. And what we really honed in on that show was really getting the real, raw, vulnerable parts of people that we couldn't quite do in the radio space. So, so that was the beginning of it. And then fast forward a couple of years, and Ryan and Laura ended up inviting me behind the mic, and much to my dismay, and I was like, I'm good behind the scenes. And he was
Uh-huh.
like, no, 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 you need to come and be a voice too. And so he really allowed me to practice being behind the mic. And then Laura and I had our own little segment within that show
Mhm.
where we continued to craft our own skills and develop those things in real time with each other. I mean, with your best friend, right, your right hand, you're like, okay, we can do this, right? um, so that was such a gift to me as we continue to grow. And in about 2020, in January of 2020, I felt like, and we all felt like, okay, we've launched it. It's doing great. And let's continue to grow. So they kind of let me fly the coop and I immediately had a couple of people reach out asking if I could help produce their show, and was like, okay, I guess we're starting this podcast production company. And my husband jumped on board and wanted to help with editing, and then it just continued of people asking me questions and, hey, what do you think about this? And
Mhm.
in the meantime, I had started my own podcast, kind of just sharing my own journey holistically of mind, body, and spirit, because I had all of this information that I needed to come out.
Mhm.
And so I just shared on the mic every week, and then more and more clients would come and ask me questions and ask for coaching, and got my certification for coaching as well during those next couple of years. And so that's kind of where my journey has come to now as a podcast management company. And again, I'm still behind the mic with Wholistic Hearts, my first podcast, and then Wholistic Podcasting for podcasters, which is all about those podcast coaching questions that I get over
Mhm.
and over and over again, and what it would look like to work with me as a podcast coach, encouraging you through your podcasting journey.
What a story. And just imagine if your friend had never asked you
Right?
that
I know.
question.
I know. I really truly believe that that is the heart of when there's somebody behind Zoom or we're meeting face to face in a group and they're like, well, I don't have a story to share. And you're like, oh, no, no, no. Everybody has a story to share. And if I can do it, and
Mhm.
then you can do it too. And being able to call out those gifts that people are just kind of
Mhm.
blinded of not
Mhm.
seeing it in yourself, but you can
Mhm.
see it in them. Yes, I am forever grateful for
Yeah.
his boldness in asking me to do that.
Well, and you're absolutely correct. Everybody does have a story, even though they don't realize it. I've interviewed so many people, and they're so fascinating, and their stories are so fascinating, and they think that they're absolutely ordinary.
Mhm.
And people will ask me to be on their show, and I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about? I haven't done anything. And then it's like, oh, that's right. I guess I did. I just kind of forget because I've lived it. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. But not only does everybody have a story, once you get that story, there are so many, and you already said it, backstories. There are so many stories to that story that
Mhm.
actually it's just such a fascinating little web to unwind and to go through. It's just an amazing experience.
Yes, absolutely. And the more clear you are, like you said, of understanding your story, the more you can offer. Like
Mm.
I have loved listening to your podcast because you do
Oh, thank
share
you.
back and forth of your own story. And that's just beautiful, because then people can be like, oh, I experienced that too. And they don't feel so alone. And that's such
Right.
a big thing right now, is people, with as much interconnection as we have through podcasting, social media, all of these places, we can still feel so alone if we're
Hmm.
not truly sharing our story.
Hmm.
And man, we got to do the work in,
Yeah.
in order to be able to share that really profoundly and honestly.
And it is hard. It's really hard to put yourself out there.
Mhm.
like that, and even to share some of the things that are really kind of difficult to talk about and personal to talk about. And, to me, it almost felt like, because I put a lot of the story in, my second book, especially, and it felt like I had just ripped off all my clotothes and walked down Main Street naked. And it was
True.
just,
Yes.
it's so hard, but
Yes.
it does. I've talked to so many other people who started their own shows to try and, share their story and get other people to share theirs. And I just love this interconnection and this
Mhm.
ability to be able to share things like that, because you're right that we still feel isolated a lot of times.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Yep. So I think I love what you said, that you feel so naked walking down the street after you share your story. It's like is it Brene Brown that talks about like the vulnerability hangover, where you're like, for me, as soon as I publish an episode that's really very closely to my heart, then I'm like, oh gosh, here it comes. And
See,
then you
I
feel
had
that, oh no.
I had never heard that about the vulnerability hangover, but it makes perfect sense, because after that book went live, and that was just this past March, I had 3 really rough weeks where I
Mm,
felt like I just wanted to, I couldn't hide under the bed because I can't fit. But it
exactly.
was like I just wanted to curl up in a bunch of, just hide somewhere, because or maybe stay down here in my basement. I didn't even want to face anybody, because I thought, you can't get that genie back in the bottle. It's out there.
It's so true. So true. But then that's where the beauty comes in, because then
That's
somebody needed to hear that story,
Yeah.
and most likely more than one person needed to hear that story, and how life-changing it could be for so many people.
That's true. So, and I do want you to continue on and kind of explain a little bit more about the podcasting journey. But first, I had one thing that I really wanted to say, because I think it is just so sweet that it's almost like your dad passed the baton over to you.
Yes. I totally have chills, because when I went through my coaching certification, it was such a I mean, a lot of your coaching certifications, you're doing a whole lot of self-coaching and interactive coaching, and that was a huge aha moment for me, was
Mhm.
that mantle is being passed on, and what an honor it is
Mhm.
to be able to pick that up and carry that on. And one of the things he used to say, and it would drive me crazy, as a teenager, and he would be like talking to this clerk at the grocery store, and like long conversations. Oh, do you know who I met today? And at the baggage claim, and I mean, he knew everybody. And I'd always be like, why do you do this? And I'm naturally an introvert, so I like want to hide, you know. And he was like, Kristen, everybody's got a story. And
Mhm.
so, absolutely, the baton got passed on to me, because that was not mine to hold originally. And I truly feel like when he passed, and then my friend Ryan, you know, calling out that in me, uh,
Mhm.
something rose up within me of like, absolutely, everybody's story needs to be heard. So,
That's exactly what I was thinking. You rose to the occasion
mm,
and just met that challenge, and look at what you're doing. You just excel at it. And that's just
mm,
awesome.
thank you.
So
Thank
now, for people who are listening, let's talk about this one topic. Okay. So
you.
why would anyone want to start a podcast?
Mm. Well, you may not want to start a podcast. Start with that. um, well, it goes back to, you have a story to share.
Mhm.
And whether you use podcasting or writing, or you're talking to a friend, I challenge you to share your story, because, like I said, you offer a place for people to be seen, and a
Mhm.
space to be known, and
Mhm.
to know that they're human just like you're human.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think back to, if you would have told me at the beginning of 2016, when we're building Rebel Parenting, that I would have my own show, I would have laughed like, what? My life is a lot of diapers. Or I mean, not diapers at that point. It was probably more like school shuffle and tantrums, and like I don't even know what end is up. So
Mhm.
I don't know what to share. And so I would speak to that person and be like, you will have a time in your life where you're ready to share. And that's
Mm.
okay. And so when I have coaches, authors, influencers who meet with me one-on-one, especially in that first call, and they say, I just don't know what to say. And my question to them is, you have so much to say, especially if you're a coach, author, an
Mhm.
influencer,
Mhm.
because you already have a story. You're already out there. You're already coaching people, and they want to hear what's going on behind the other side of Zoom in your world. What did
Mhm.
you do 5 years ago when you were in the same position?
Mhm.
And so that same picture of if I would have talked to myself in 2016, it would have been like, oh man, you're going to have a lot to say. And
Mhm.
it's okay if you don't want to say it right now, but you'll know when the time is ready. And you'll be so scared, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And like I felt in 2020 when I branched out on my own, I literally felt like my brain was so constipated with so much information, healing, all this knowledge that I wanted to just like put it out there, even though it was scary as all get out,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I like I said, I'm comfortable hiding. I'm
Mhm.
comfortable being the quiet one and observing the room and seeing the dynamics play out instead
Mhm.
of being the one being asked questions. And so if I can do it, you can do it. Any coach can do it, an author, an entrepreneur, and sharing the story behind the brand is
Mhm.
so human connecting in the
Mhm.
whole scheme of things. So that's my answer.
I have to tell you, so you are an introvert. I am an extrovert, more like an extrovert squared. And,
Mhm.
that's just the way I am. But even for me, getting in front of this microphone and starting to talk. And like I said, the only reason why I started a podcast was there was a local radio talk show host in town I used to listen to for like a couple of years. And I just loved her. I thought she was hilarious. And she announced one time on her radio show, that she was starting a platform of all women podcasters.
Wow.
And she says, so, if you want to get on our mailing list, sign up. And I ran down to the girl cave and I signed up for her newsletter right away, got an automated response that says, hey, why don't you enter our contest? We are looking for the next best female podcaster. And I'm going, number one, I don't know what a podcast is. Number two,
Yep.
I don't know why I would ever want one. Number three, people have told me I'd be good at it and I should look into it. Number four, if I enter this contest, I might be able to meet this lady in person. So that was my goal. So I entered the contest having no idea what I was doing. And then I got the work that we had to do. So after 8 weeks I would sweat. We had to do little mini, like 20-minute long episodes and then send them into them. And I would sit here and just sweat because I had no idea what I was doing. I would just ramble on, and make a long story short, I did not win the contest, but I was invited to go onto the platform. So I did that for about 9 months. And then I thought, you know what? I think I could do this on my own.
Yes.
So the moral of the story is, sometimes you just got to start.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. For sure.
And
I mean,
you don't have to be good at it at
no,
first, but you're
no.
not going to get good unless you start.
I mean, that's really what happened in my story. I mean, Ryan asking me to come sit behind the mic while he was doing a a conversation. I was like, "Oh no. I'm just going to say, "Uh-huh." Yeah. And that's totally where I started. And it's okay if you are starting where you just jumped right in and you had no idea what you were doing for 20 minutes. And that's amazing. And how brave and courageous is that to just press record and go for it? And oh, I can't tell you how many clients that have been so afraid, and then they'll press record and they'll submit it and then they'll just be like, I can't believe I did that. And it builds confidence over and
Mhm.
over again,
Mhm.
especially when they hear from listeners that are like, this episode really moved me.
Mhm.
That is like, there's no greater compliment than hearing from a listener that is like, this just touched me so
Mhm.
deeply. Uh, yeah, and that's amazing. I mean, if we
Mhm.
could do that to every podcaster, please do. Please do. We want to hear from you.
So, how do you help people find their voice? I mean, that to me is a really big deal because finding your voice to me has several different connotations. It could be finding your voice when you're in a relationship, that it's like no, saying no,
Yes.
establishing clear boundaries, being able to express yourself. So, how do you encourage people to find their own voice?
You nailed it. I mean, so boundaries is a huge topic. So for me as a mom, I I know I had to start in my own work. Like I said, I had a big long journey ahead of doing some deep heart work. So
Mhm,
for anyone who's listening and wanting to really hone in on your voice, find a counselor,
mhm,
find a coach, somebody who can help lead you through practicing learning to know who you are. Awareness is key. Like that's number one.
mhm,
What do I love? What do I enjoy? Uh I mean, to this day, I am still growing in my own voice. Um I was on an interview the other day where we were talking about how when we were little, I was the youngest of four, and my voice was definitely the least loudest because I was the only girl, I was the youngest, and I had three older brothers who were funny as all get out, very much the life of the party. So for me to get a voice in was like, well, I can't compete with that.
yeah.
So I'll just be quiet. And so that was my MO. So as an adult, watching my own kids, working through my own journey of healing and processing of like, oh, it does matter what I want to eat tonight. It does
Mhm,
matter what I want to do today. It does matter that I love to work and my kids know that I love to work. So they're letting me work in peace today while they're at home. So being able, like just little small things of recognizing and bringing awareness to what brings you joy, what
mhm,
doesn't bring you joy, then physically and viscerally, what are those things that our body says no when we might say yes to something, but yet there's a check in our spirit, or we'll be asked to volunteer for something and we'll say, yeah, I could totally do it. And then like there's a gut reaction of like, oh no, I don't have time to do this. And I already have
mhm,
so much on my plate. That's listening to your voice in those
mhm,
really, really simple ways so that you can grow into even a bigger awareness of these are the things that really matter on a big level,
mhm,
whether it's what are your passions, what's your purpose, what's your mission for your podcast, all of those things, and finding your own voice because
mhm,
there's a lot of voices out there, and you can hear so many other people's voices. And unless we really do the work to tune in like a radio station
mhm,
to our own voice, we will constantly be searching
mhm,
for validation, affirmation, worthiness
mhm,
through all these other channels of approval. And
mhm,
so that to me is really important as a podcaster to really hone in on your own voice, which really that is the holistic view is
mhm,
it is about boundaries. It is about the inner work. It is about
mhm,
physical, like how are you doing physically? How are you doing
mhm,
mentally in your mind, in your mindset? And it encompasses all of that.
mhm. So basically, what you're describing is an incredibly skilled life skill. It's a tool.
Mhm.
It's listening to your intuition and following through with
Yes.
that intuition. And I find it fascinating because I think especially women have that incredible intuition, but I almost feel like along as our life's journey that intuition has kind of been weaned out of us, whether it's intentional or just accidental. But it's like, oh
Right.
well, you're just exaggerating, oh that can't possibly be, oh just give this guy a chance, he's really not that creepy, he seems kind of nice, you should go out with him, silly things like that.
Right.
But when you hear that over and over again, then you start to doubt your own self judgment or your own judgment and your own self-worth, even that everybody else is more important and their feelings.
Yes. Yes. I'll give you an example of a life example of this. So for years, I have had autoimmune issues that have been unsolvable. I mean, I've gone to every kind of doctor. I've tried every supplement. I've tried every network marketing thing,
Mhm.
and worked with a coach, and years really tried to listen to my body and what it was saying. And I decided on a like, I don't want to think about it too much. I'm just going to commit to this challenge. So back in June, I started a challenge called 75 Hard. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but
Mm-mm.
basically it's a really crazy mental toughness program. And so you do 2 workouts a day. One is outside and one is inside, and they both have to be 45 minutes. So I knew my body, as far as like my energy level, could only take a certain amount. So I did like yoga and weight, or walking and a HIIT workout or something like that.
Mhm.
So I knew what my body needed after 11 years of really fine tuning, listening to what was going on. And then there's drinking a gallon of water, reading 10 pages, following a nutrition plan of your choice, which I'm pretty well aware of what my body thrives on.
Mhm.
And there's one more. Oh, progress picture every day, so that you don't share with anybody. It's just yours. Thank
I
goodness.
like that. I like that idea that you don't have to share it with anybody. I like that.
Yes. So we're on day 72
Mhm.
today, and it's the first time my autoimmune issues have almost gone into complete remission. I've not had one flare in the last 2.5 months that have been debilitating. It's been there, but it has decreased more than it ever has in 11 years. Now, I attribute it to the fact that I didn't ask permission from a coach. I didn't ask
Mm.
permission from somebody else. I just did it. I was like, I'm not asking anybody. I'm just going to go for it. I would love it if my husband did it. He's doing it with me. But the decision was mine and mine
Mhm.
alone, because I felt it in my gut that this was something that was going to propel me to grow and to heal at a different level. And that was huge, because so many of us who have lost our voice, we almost feel like we need permission from
Mhm.
someone else to express what we really need. And that is completely powerful. Uh, so, yes, listening to your gut is huge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is such an empowering story. I mean, I swear I hear angels singing in the background because it's just, it's the body has an incredible capacity to heal.
Yes.
And when you get that kind of that mind body connection and really listening to your body and listening to yourself, that's amazing work that you've done. So congratulations and good for you. And I know you're just going to keep on just improving until, you don't even have any symptoms whatsoever.
Yes. Amen.
Listen to those angels sing.
That's right. Uh,
So
yeah.
in the same vein as talking about finding your voice, so how do you help people articulate their message clearly and succinctly? Because even now, as long as I've been doing this, there's a lot of times when I'm actually tripping over my own words.
Hmm.
And maybe my brain is going faster than my mouth or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of my tricks is morning pages. I don't know if you've ever heard of that with The Artist's Way.
Mm-mm.
It's an old book by Julia Cameron, and she's a big creative. So she has a book that it's a whole long process basically, but one of the nuggets in there that I gained from learning about my own voice and kind of fine tuning those pieces is called morning pages. And what that is you wake up and you write, no matter what it is in your brain. It's like a meditation, and you put it on paper for
Mhm.
3 pages. And so you become real aware of the common thoughts that are in your brain. Um, so it could be anything like, I have no idea what to write today. I'm really sleepy. And then about a page and a half, you really get into the nitty gritty of what your brain experiences on the daily. And it is
Mhm.
so fascinating
Mhm.
to really hone in and hear these deep inner truths that will come out and you can process through in these writings. And I have not um, been so aware of my mind process and mindset since I started doing this. I started doing it back in 2018 for a little short stint,
Mhm.
and then I started doing it in April, and I have not missed a day since then. And it has been unreal how much clarity and where my limiting beliefs are, and awareness of, oh, okay, I need
Mhm.
to work on that. um, and it's so beautiful. So that is my most recent thing that I will tell clients is
Mhm.
you've got to be aware of what you're telling yourself. From the
Mhm.
moment that you get up in the morning, I don't know about you, but my brain takes off about 100 miles an hour, and I have to pause and slow down my brain and make sure that I'm writing out and really becoming aware of the train that it's on for that day, so
Mhm.
that I can either redirect the track and say, no, 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 we're not going down this path today. We're gonna stay here in this belief. Um, so that's a huge, huge way of clarifying really what you're bringing to the table.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, you got to know yourself,
Mhm.
as you pour out to other people. Uh, Secondly, is really honing in on who are you talking to and why. Why does it matter that you're coming to the table?
Mhm.
So, playing a little bit of that devil's advocate of, okay, so what are you going to bring to the table that's a little bit unique to your story and not like somebody else's story? And so really uncovering a lot of genericness. I mean, that's not a word, but it is a word.
No, I think it's a great word. I like making up words, so we'll add this one to our dictionary.
I like it. Okay. So uncovering that generic place of, like, say you're a life coach and you're like, well, I want to help people in their life. And so, like, really unpacking, okay, well, how do you want to help them? Okay, well, tell me more about that. What is important about that to you? So just really digging deeper and deeper and deeper and asking more and more questions so that you get at the
Mhm.
heart of what's
Mhm.
actually the passion and the clarity that they want to bring to the table.
Mhm. Couple of things. First of all, you use the word heart a lot.
Mm.
And I love that. You can talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But also going back to the writing, because thanks for bringing that up, because I actually did that a few years ago. And I think that, maybe it was with COVID. And then, a year ago, my husband just retired. And, so a lot of changes and I stopped doing it. But it was very, very enlightening. And the other thing I wanted you to bring up, that when you're doing these writings, I'm guessing that you're actually taking pen to paper and you're not typing on a keyboard, because that is part of the activity and part of the process and the
Mm.
way that it activates a certain area in your brain. So if you wanted to elaborate on that, I'd love that.
Yes. Okay. Let me hit on your first question. You said heart. I say a
Heart.
lot on heart. I strongly believe we need more wholehearted people in this world. And we are so disconnected to our heart. And I say that as somebody who is really good at connecting brain to brain, mind to mind, and not ever connecting here. So for me, that is my work, is connecting
Mhm.
back to my heart. I have to reconnect here. And I truly believe that people, if they really want, because that's where you're going to connect. And
Mhm.
so that's the reason I love wholehearted. I love holistic. I mean,
Mhm.
that is who I am. So
Okay.
um, so then going on to the writings, yes, absolutely. It is all handwritten. And the reasoning is because it slows down the speed at which your brain is firing off. And like I said, if you're anything like me, your brain can go about 1,000 miles an hour
Yeah.
and bounce around like a squirrel.
Uh-huh.
And so there's something about physically putting pen to paper that it
Mhm.
slows it down and really acts as like a meditation, because you're really being deliberate on your thoughts onto the paper, and being aware of any time that you're like, oh, I don't really want to say that, but it's super important that you say it and you write it
Mhm.
down, because you had that thought in your brain, and putting it on paper makes it real, of like, wow, either I say that to myself, it's terrible, or you become aware of patterns that you
Mhm.
constantly do. For instance, for me, what I've become aware of is I will constantly contradict myself. I'll say, I feel sad, but da 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 da. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of I feel blank, but da 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 da.
Mhm.
So that's something that I would not have come to know unless it was on paper. And I went back and I saw how many times I contradict myself. And
Wow.
yeah. And so it's very eye-opening to see really what's going on inside
Mhm.
of our mind.
Mhm. And just so I want to just bring this up for the audience, just so they know, these writings are just for you only.
Yes.
Nobody else is going to read them. Nobody else is going to see them. Nobody's going to judge them, unless maybe 20 years from now you keep them and you want to publish them in a book somewhere.
Yes.
But this is not for public consumption.
Yes. And the reason being is because we will filter what we say on our paper instead of being real honest with ourselves.
Yeah, we're really good at that, aren't we?
We are.
Okay, so the other thing I would love for you to address, because you mentioned it very, very briefly at the beginning, is balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship, and especially motherhood with running your own business and what you're trying to do, your own self healing and your own, time for yourself. Self-care is basically what it is. So you do have 4 children.
Yes.
And talk to us about this, because I'm sure there are a lot of women out there going, how in the world does she do it? And how can I do it too?
Yes. Oh, the common question of how do you do it? I don't do it alone. I
Mhm.
will say I have tons of support. I have an amazing husband who is an incredible dad, and he has the flexibility, thankfully, to stay home. Like today, he's staying home and he's doing rides to work for my teenager, and um, and I have a support team as well. So I have a virtual assistant and I have
Mhm.
an editor that helps with that side of things, so
Mhm.
that my energy stays on what I love to do, which is coaching and doing the podcast.
Mhm.
So that's number one. And number two, I would say seasons. There are seasons of life where
Mhm.
it is not possible to put my heart and soul into my work. And I would say I'm just now coming into that season. I would say from 2016, when I started Rebel Parenting, to 2019, I was in a deep dive of inner healing with coaches, therapists, doing my own work, harnessing in on my body and my food and all of those things. And my kids knew it. They were right there with me with all of
Aw.
the autoimmune stuff. And I think really that is another aspect of really learning how to use your voice of, I
Mhm.
can't do this, and
Mhm.
um I can't commit to this at this time.
Mhm.
So for instance, this last year, is when I really launched publicly that I had a podcast management company. And in order for me to do that, I had to hire on my 2 people that would come and help me, because I was homeschooling one of my kiddos at the time. And I was
Wow.
like, there's just no way that I could do all of this. But I knew, that God was just really un like, I think of Dorothy when she steps on the yellow brick road and the
Mhm.
lights light up. That's basically what this last year was like, okay, next step and next step. And it wasn't so much of a inner working time as it was focusing on my one kiddo and getting my business to be a well-oiled machine without me.
Mhm.
And then the spring being able to be like, okay, I'm going to hit it again on my heart work because that's the most important to me, that I want to be in alignment with what I say on the podcast and what I'm coaching clients with. And so this summer was a big, like, I'm taking a break from podcasting, from leading groups, from coaching, and I just need to go inward for a while. And then being able to, in this fall, um, have space because all of my kids are at school and I have support from the school system here. And that I could not do what I do now if I didn't have the support
Mhm.
from school, the support from my husband and my team, so that I can pour my energy back into my business. And I will say too that, self-care is such a big buzzword right now.
Mhm.
Uh, and my self-care is pouring into my work. I love what I do. I don't feel like I'm working when I'm working. I feel like I'm just living into who I'm called to be.
Mhm.
And I know that's a big gift to have.
Mhm.
And so I fight for this time, and I
Mhm.
don't allow, I mean, there are days where I'm like, well, do I really have to work today? And I'll go take a break. But most of the time I need the break, or,
Mhm.
I need to get outside and go for a hike in beautiful Colorado,
Mhm.
um, or there's the flexibility of like, well, now there's a kid home sick,
Mhm.
and that's okay. Like learning
Mhm.
to accept the flow and the seasons of life that you're in,
Mhm.
totally fine. Do what you can do. And I just don't want people to get lost in the season that they're in and they forget
Mhm.
who they are in the midst of that season.
Boy, that is a really empowering statements there.
Mm.
And to kind of embrace the season that you're in rather than fighting it and
Mhm.
resisting it, because that's not healthy for
Mhm.
your body or your brain.
Nope.
And
I,
that it's okay to take a break.
mhm. Yes. Yes, absolutely. We all need rest. Yep.
Yeah, and I repeated that mostly so I would listen to it. So it's in my brain because I have a hard time with that myself. And it's like, all right, it's time to stop pushing quite so hard. I'm not sure what I'm pushing for, but I don't know. I guess it's just in my DNA.
Yes. And even the more reason to fight for that rest, because,
Mhm.
you know, when we choose to rest, it's an act of trust that everything's
Mhm.
going to pan out.
Mhm.
And I hear you. I am preaching to the choir. I just came off of that summer little sabbatical, and I am so much more refreshed than I was
Mhm.
when I was ending the school year and ending the podcast year and all of those things. So yes, yes, yes.
Well, I just started knitting again. I used to knit constantly, and it was my way of relaxing. And I gave it up 12 years ago, long story. And then it was like, I was feeling the itch. I was feeling like the urge and just to feel the yarn in my hands and just so I did go to a yarn shop last week and I bought some yarn and I bought a pattern. And I will have to say, it did not go well.
Oh,
For like the first couple of days. And I had to rip it out a few times, but it's like it's a learning experience. It's like relearning this language that I used to know. So I've just really been having a lot of fun with it now after that third day. Now I think I got the pattern down.
I love that. I love that you went back to an old passion that you knew would bring you
Mhm.
joy and rest and calm, and you
Mhm.
stuck with it. That's awesome.
And there's something about just the tactile sense of feeling the yarn and the sound of the clicking of the needles and just the visual of the color and the shapes that it takes. It's kind of for me, it hits all my senses.
Yes. Oh, so good. I'm starting a dance class. I know you're a dancer. You were a dancer.
I
Uh,
am still. I still dance.
oh, so beautiful. So I took dance all growing up and then stopped once I was in high school because I focused on softball instead.
Mhm.
And so I have a good friend of mine who's a hip hop teacher, and I've told her for years, I was like, if you ever start a adult hip hop class, I'm gonna sign up. And she called me out this summer, and she was like, okay, I started it.
Oh,
Are you gonna start? And of course, I mean, talk about mom life balance. I was like, oh girl, I know in the fall, every night in the week is full of sports and taking people to this and that. And she was like, okay. And then I had a total moment of, wait a minute, this would bring me so much joy. And I have a husband who would be like, you should totally go. I got it. And so,
Mhm.
yep, I'm going tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is my first class. So
It's
I'm
your
so
first
excited.
class tomorrow. Oh my God, I'm going to be thinking about you. You're going to have so much fun. There is something so indescribably delicious about doing an activity and sharing it with a bunch of people in a room who share the same passion that you do for it. And the music, I mean, I've never done hip hop. That's not my style, but mine was classical ballet. And I haven't had a ballet class now for about 3 months because now I'm teaching at another studio doing things and stuff. But I'm still dancing. I actually started pole dancing.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, I did that when I turned 58. That was my birthday gift to myself. And there's a long story behind it. But yeah, so I'm still doing it. And I'm actually doing a competition next month.
Wow.
Yeah.
You get it. That's awesome.
I don't know about that. Talk about, taking off your clothes and being completely naked. It's just, I
That's
did
real.
it once. I did it once in 2019. My coach, one of my teachers, talked me into doing it. And it was absolutely the most terrifying thing that I have ever done in my entire life. But once the music started, I was fine. I had a great time and I won my division. Of course, there were only 3 of us competing because not that many women over 50, in that age group want to do something like that. But the funny thing is, I was giving a speech like a week and a half later. I was doing a presentation for a networking group that I belong to. So, professional presentation. And, always would be so nervous and worked up. And it was like, this is nothing. I got this.
You're like, you have no idea. Yep.
So
Oh,
once you put yourself so far out of your comfort zone,
amen.
and that's what you did with taking on the responsibility of doing the podcasting, the production, and everything. So you
Yeah,
certainly understand that, getting out of your comfort zone.
I do. I do. And continue to try to push myself too.
Well,
Yep.
obviously, if you're taking hip hop class tomorrow,
Yes.
I'm going to stalk you. I'm going to send you an email and see how it went.
Okay. I would love to give you feedback
Because
and be held accountable that I'm going to go.
oh, you are going to go. I know you're going to go, and I know you're going to love it. It's going to be so much fun.
Yes. Uh,
So, do you have any? I have just loved this conversation. Kristen, it's just been wonderful. Do you have, well, first of all, go ahead and tell the audience where they can find you, where they can find your podcast, your website, all of your social media links, where they can find you. Of course, all of this is going to be in the show notes, but I like for my guests to be able to, verbalize it themselves for the audience.
yes. So you can find me on Facebook, and Instagram is uh, another place that I'm at pretty consistently, at Kristin Fields Chadwick. On Facebook, I do have a community. It's a free community that you can join if you're thinking about starting a podcast or if you are currently a podcaster. And that's called Wholistic Podcasting for Podcasters. So you can drop in there and give me a little shout out and say that you heard me on here, and that would be awesome. And yeah, you can find me on my website as well at www.kristinfieldschadwick.com.
Excellent. And you have given us so many wonderful tips, great information. Love hearing your story. Do you have any final like pearls of wisdom that you want to drop on the audience before we sign off?
Oh, I would just, again, I want to reiterate that your voice does matter and your story does matter, no matter what it is. If you're a coach, if you're a stay at home mom, if you are a woman in the workforce, yes, your voice matters. And if anybody wants to pursue podcasting as a hobby or growing your business, I would love to talk with you. I offer a 30-minute free consultation where we just talk about what does it look like to start a podcast. And so that's what I would love to offer to your audience.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Kristen. Thank you for being here. And especially because your kids were off today. You didn't even know that.
I should have known, but I didn't. And that's all right. They're doing great. They're doing all their chores and getting some late schoolwork done. So,
So it all worked out.
it all works out. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being on the show. I have absolutely loved it. And it's an honor to meet you and an honor to talk to you.
You too. Thank you, Cheryl.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. And do check out Kristin's website, check out her podcasts. Obviously, she has a lot to say. She's a wonderful voice and a lot of coaching tips. So you might want to check out her podcast, get that consultation, and see how you can improve yourself, find your voice, and tell your story. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.